What's up, cycling fans? We're back. Pack chatter coming at you. It's bike race season and things are popping. We got a great show for you today, but first we'll hit the sponsors. We're brought to you by Legacy Bikes. That's Legacy with an I, Legaci bikes.com. They got all your kids' bikes needs and now are launching a custom paint program for your kids' balance bikes. So check them out on legacybikes.com and hit them up and see that new program and all the good stuff they've got for kids' balance bikes. We're also brought to you by NYSBRA, the New York State Bicycle Racing Association. They're responsible for all the behind-the-scenes work for racing in New York State, grants, permits, upgrades, officials, all that good stuff. So check out their website, follow them on Facebook, and see all the great resources that they have for racers and for events in New York State. Lastly, we are brought to you by The Rock, Crit and Grand Fondo, baby. July, it's coming. 6th year of the Crit, 5th year of the Fondo, and we're going bigger and better than ever. We're starting this year off with the Fondo on Saturday, July 27th from Deer Run Winery. We're only taking 100 riders, so you need to register fast. Every rider gets a bottle of wine from Deer Run, a catered meal after their ride. We've got live music, and we have 5 killer courses. We've got 19-mile cruise around Canisius Lake. Beautiful little ride, hybrid friendly. Come out, cruise around, enjoy the views, and come back to the party. We got a couple 45-mile gravel and paved options. Perfect intro to gravel, perfect challenging but mellow pavement rides, beautiful rural scenery, lots of great views. So great courses and great choices for all kinds of riders there. And then we get into a couple of the big boys. We got a 70-mile paved ride with the Big Daddy Vista Hill. It's always been a part of the Fondo, one of the most gnarly climbs you're going to find. And then the most unbelievable gravel route that we've ever come up with, 90 miles, 7,000 feet. This baby is a monster ride. Gravel sections that I guarantee most people have never been on, never seen. Totally developed by the Once Again boys who train in those areas in those backwoods of Dansville and Livingston County and love to ride those roads and want to show you just a really cool gravel adventure. So anywhere from 19 to 90, you got something going on for you, and then a big party at one of the best wineries in New York State to cap it off. And that's just day one. Day two, we go back to the airport crit, and we've got the funkiest, most fun crit format you're gonna find anywhere. Closed airport, no traffic, no guardrails, no telephone poles, no dumpsters, nothing to hit. Fast course, wide open, funky little hairpin in 5 turns, so it's still technical and fun, but a lot more safe than a lot of these downtown crits that you end up running into. We've got Smoking in the Valley Barbecue, Vertical Cafe, Silver Lake Brewing Company, music, announcing, the whole deal. Categories from Cat 5s right up through 1 through 3s, 1, 2s. We got kids events, equal payouts and equal field options for women's racing. It's going to be a great weekend, great parties, great racing. We always get a nice draw and always get some really competitive riders. So wherever you fit in there, find your spot, ride one day, race the next day, do them both, do one, but come out and join us in July 27th and 28th. All right. So let's get to the show here. Today's guest is Seth Jones from Arapahoe Hincapie. He is a first-year pro, and he's also a college student. Really interesting, really well-spoken, really mature young man. Had a lot of fun with this one. Definitely learned a lot from a real young rider. Very insightful in some really good stories and a good sense of humor. Love to talk. Just a really fun show. So I hope you guys will enjoy it and follow this kid. We'll put some Instagram and notes and stuff in the notes of this podcast so that you can follow his career. But yeah, check him out. He's a very talented kid, and it's super fun to talk to, and I'm a big fan now. So I hope you guys are too. Enjoy.
You'll never go out on a training ride and dig that deep.
Awesome. We won gold.
They're life rides.
I'm like, dude, I'm still figuring this out.
Lose sight of the fact that it's whoever goes faster.
This isn't a road race. This isn't a mountain bike race.
The sensei of sprint, Todd Shesky.
My eyes are coming out of my head. Just get in here.
All right, we are on, and with my man Todd Shesky as always. What's up, buddy?
Well, I think we're hot and heavy into the race season now, man. Although you'd hardly believe it's summer up here. Yesterday was 85 degrees. Finally getting a tan, and go out riding tonight. And Eileen and I are wearing leg warmers, and I got my fleece top on. Dude, it's 55 degrees and the wind's blowing. So there you go. I think we had our one day of summer, and we're back to October now.
All right, cross is coming, I think is what they say, right? It's
stop it. No, track starts the last week of August. Come on. So we're looking forward to it. But we had a good Bloomfield race yesterday. It was a good day. It didn't rain. The thunderstorm stayed over the lake, and so Tryon Bike did a nice job putting the race together down there, taking that over from the promotional end. So it was a good turnout, and that course is just always hard, and it always breaks things up enough. It's just you look at the course profile and you think it's not that bad, and then you wind up being like, wow, you're blown up in 3 or 4 laps. So but it was a good race, and it was good to see a lot of people out, and Larkinville starts this week. Yeah,
I missed Bloomfield. We had some family requirements, but I was glad to see Tryon took it over for the first time. I saw some of the results, and it looks like everything went well, and was happy to see that staple still going locally and doing great jobs. And definitely Larkin is always one of my favorites for the season, so I'm excited to see that. I'm going to also miss the first one of that for a work requirement, but I'll be at the next 3, so that's going to be that's kind of like the big mark for crit season for me is when Larkin gets going.
Yeah, it's always. I think it's become a pretty much a regional favorite. I mean, and I would expect to see some of our really fast Canadians coming down. I mean, I think I think Dylan Bibick will be there. I would expect to see Axel Froner. Some of these fast kids, man. These kids are fast.
Oh my God, Dylan's results lately are just unbelievable. Like he's been there since he was like 11 or something, but. He's scary fast. It's going to be crazy to see if he's back down again. So, but yeah, It'll be a lot of fun. There's some good racing there.
Yep, absolutely. So, yeah, there we are. So here we are in thick of the season, and things are rocking. So,
all right. Well, speaking of young racers, we have a young pro with us today, Seth Jones, man, from Hincapie. How you doing, Seth?
I'm doing great, guys. How you been?
Good. It's nice to finally link up. We've been talking a little bit online, and now we get to talk a little bit about your first season as a pro and your college season. Your college year is over, right? You're done for the year. So talk a little bit about that and your spring season and all that good stuff, man. So thanks for joining us.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, this is good stuff, and it's I think it was good that we waited to after the semester. I think you had a pretty loaded schedule this spring, if I understand correctly.
I did actually. It was I was trying to front load some of my courses for more of a freshman type of a year, just because there's so many intro courses and so many like courses and classes to cover because I'm not actually getting into my degree yet, and so. Actually, this spring I had 18 credit hours, which is the most that you can have at my particular college. And then even in the fall, I think I had 16 credit hours. So it's definitely a doozy, but I'm glad it's behind me for now.
Yeah, that's a pretty heavy schedule. I don't think I ever carried more than 12 because that was the bare minimum and what allowed me to stay in school. So 18 is pretty impressive.
Yeah, thank you guys. It's definitely changed, I think, throughout the years now because I mean, so many colleges now offer online classes and online, like half online classes, half in person. So it's easier for me to train and still get my college degree than I think it was like 10, 20 years ago,
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. If you don't have to be there, I mean, it obviously but just requires a kind of a little bit different, a different discipline though, because then
Yeah.
as hard as it is for people to actually get to class, and like, well, yeah, but you got to be kind of responsible to like,
Yeah.
I gotta log
Yeah.
on.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's true because you could honestly just be at like a training camp or at a race weekend and not even know that, like your grades plummeting. Like nothing, nobody will ever message you or like no professors will be like, "Hey, like this is due." It's like it's a big change from high school even because in high school you have teachers always pounding you like, "Hey, this is due this date, this is due that date." But in college and especially with online classes, it's mainly, like it's all up to you. You're self-taught most of the time.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I did some teaching at a college, and I was an assistant professor, and it was like I was just told people like, look, if you don't do the work, I'm getting paid the same, and I just have less work to do,
Yeah,
and it,
exactly.
and it's sort of like I want you to do well, and but I'm not chasing you down, and at some point, it's like I would try to tell people like, well, if you kind of don't do the work and you don't, it's sort of like you went to the store, you bought stuff, you gave your money, and then you left it sitting on a conveyor and you just walked out the store.
It's so true. It's so
You
true,
know?
man. It's
So
Yeah,
like,
I like that line. I tell high school kids that I get paid the same whether you show up or not. So it doesn't always go over as well in high school, but I
yeah,
definitely pull that line out.
yeah, it's like you're just making my job easier, right? But it does take discipline, and online courses can be challenging, and you'll probably find as you go later, there's gonna be some courses you're gonna be like, I'm not doing that one online. Because
yeah,
you need that interaction to be able to ask questions. But man, doing a front load like that is a good plan though. Is just getting some of those things out of the way. So, but what's your major that you're
um,
good for?
I originally majored in history like first semester, and then now for my second semester, I chose a double major in computer science and informatics. So I'm a major in history and computer science and informatics.
So you'll be able to tell us like the history of computers from like the
Yeah.
abacus to
from like 2005 on.
an abbreviated history.
Well, because whenever I was leaving high school, I mean, like I found cycling when I was, I think, eighth grade, middle school, and so from like my whole high school career, I was always like cycling, 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 and then it got time to go to college. I was always planning on going to college, but I was like, I should probably think about what I'm going to major in because I can't major in cycling.
Right.
And so I was like, oh, I love history. I always watch history channels and I read books about history and everything like that. And so I chose a history major and I'm really interested in like law and government and everything like that. And so I'm hoping if everything goes right after my cycling career and after like actual my undergraduate, I'm hoping to go to law school. And then like after for my first semester, I was like, well, I should probably come out of my college degree with a little more than just a history degree. And so I chose computer science and informatics just because I also like programming.
Okay.
So it's a
Yeah.
it's a little bit of like it's two completely different disciplines, but it'll work out in the end, hopefully.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
that's smart. And I'm wondering, maybe you could tell me too, as far as like young guys, but I was talking to Curtis White about this a couple weeks ago, where he was talking about he just got done with college, and him being sort of a guy who's maybe not a lot of guys are coming out with the college degree, but and also racing pro at the same time, and kind of having that backup, so to speak, of he thinks he can make a career of this, and certainly is talented enough to do so, but also is looking at, well, if this doesn't work out or when this is done, what else I can do. What about Curtis is a little older than you are, but what about guys your age? Are you seeing some of the guys your age racing also going to school, or are you kind of unique on that front?
I think it's interesting actually because I was thinking about this the other day while I was training, and I think there's not many cyclists, there's not many professional cyclists, young guys like me that go to college and get a college degree, but there's definitely a lot of collegiate cyclists, where they go to a college and they race like just as much as maybe a professional cyclist and they train maybe just as much, but they don't race professionally. Like around me, I think there's like a school, Lenore Rhine, and they race collegiately, and a lot of college kids will do that. And I think it's because since there's so little U23 development going on in the US right now, they're kind of leaning more towards collegiate cycling because it kind of fills that gap, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so the funny thing was, I was talking to some of my teammates about this at team camp too. And they were saying that some of them do have their college degree, but some of them who didn't have their college degree were saying that they kind of wish they went and did college just because it opens your mind a little more. And it kind of gives you a broader view on things besides bike racing, you know?
Sure. Yeah, I'm sure you get some more experiences that are not so narrow just into that bike racing experience. So can you kind of maybe, I definitely want to talk about the college experience too, but maybe before we get into that, can you lay some groundwork? You said you got into cycling in about 8th grade. Can you tell us sort of how that started for you and what that looked like in middle and high school for you?
Yeah, for sure. My cycling path kind of started, I think, that the same way that most cyclists paths kind of start. I started out as a cross country runner just because I like to run, and my friends were doing it in middle school. But it turned out I have really terrible form for running, and I often, yeah, I'm definitely not going to become a triathlete after my career.
There's lots of reasons that we shouldn't become triathletes. That's good.
Well, just always remember, Seth. I have the 0.0 sticker on my van. Remember, right? I mean, it's like I don't run. Running's for emergencies. So it's okay. You're in good company here.
Right. Yeah, but I had terrible form, and I had a lot of foot pain and issues just because of my terrible form, and so I ended up quitting running. And so around the same time that I quit running, my dad started working as a bike mechanic at a local bike shop, and he brought home like a mountain bike one day. I think it was some sort of a Trek mountain bike, but he brought it home one day, and he's like, "Hey, you want to go mountain biking with me?" And I went mountain biking with him, and I turned out loving it. And like 3 months later, I did my first mountain bike race. And from there, I just kind of did road cycling as a way to train for mountain biking. And then I think I fell in love more with road biking just because the freedom is, I don't know, I find at least in my general area, there's only like 3 trails. And so road biking just gave me more of a freedom because I mean, I can go anywhere there's pavement, you know?
Right.
Sure.
And then just from there, it just took off, honestly.
And where were you? Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Mooresville, North Carolina. I'm originally from San Luis Obispo, California, but I've been in North Carolina since probably when I was 9. So I've lived most of my life here.
Okay.
So what did the cycling look like? What did the road cycling look like once you started to kind of take off into to middle and high school? Like how much were you doing, and sort of who were you riding with? What did that look like for you?
Yeah, I was lucky enough to, and I still am lucky enough to have a brother that's, I think he must be 24 or 23 now. It sounds terrible that I don't know my own brother's age, but it's getting to that point now. He's about 6 years older than me, so probably 24. But I'm lucky enough to have him love cycling too. So my cycling scene kind of mainly looked like riding with just some people from my dad's bike shop and doing those group rides and riding with my brother. And then from that, I got into the crit scene just because that's the main racing around here. And I remember I did my first crit with mountain bike clips. And so we could probably all tell how that ended up. And I ended up, like, cycling for me I was definitely not 100% naturally gifted at it in the terms of like physiology. Just because I didn't hit puberty until I was a lot later. So I was like, even like in 8th grade, like I think even up until freshman, maybe even junior year, I was like 5'8", 5'9". You know, I was a lot smaller, and I didn't have any facial hair or anything like that. And so I'd go and do these Cat 4 races or Cat 5 races and just get my butt handed to me, you know?
Yeah, that's always an interesting thing with anyone's development, and I think one of the hard things always when we look at juniors and and being even part of USA Cycling development system, and you're running the camps and things, and you look at a kid that's 15 years old, and you're trying to find out kind of what's their potential, and you have those cases. And I had this discussion with a parent the other day about just looking at trying to determine what somebody's steps are, and it's hard because everybody's at different levels. You're racing, you may be 15 or 16 years old, and there's kids that are like 2-3 years ahead of you physiologically.
Oh yeah, man,
So
for sure, yeah.
you know
Junior racing is so interesting just because of that fact, and oftentimes they'll lump in 15 to 16-year-olds with 17, 18-year-olds. Like they'll start the race at the same time, and it just the 17, 18-year-olds will just blow up the race for the 15
Yeah.
to 16-year-olds.
And that's a huge jump in terms of maturity. But
Yeah.
a lot of times you don't have enough kids, so they throw them together. When in any other sport, you'd never see those kids playing together.
Yeah.
In most cases, unless the 15-year-old was just super advanced for whatever the reason.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely tough. So, what year? At what point did you realize like, oh, I can really do something with this? Like you said, you kind of were a bit of a late bloomer and sort of struggled there early on and didn't feel like you had a lot of that natural ability. Like, what at the point was it like? Okay, it kind of started to click and you started to find some success.
I mean, honestly, like I eventually ended up finding some success in just local races in like Cat 4, Cat 3. But I mean, honestly, like the point in which my cycling career really started taking like a turn of more like I could actually do this as an actual career was probably last year, like my last year as a junior. Because up until that point, I was good locally and I was good like even like sometimes like nationally, but just not at the junior level. And last year, I really started having like some breakout races in national junior races, and I'd end up getting my Cat 1 midway through my season last year. And so honestly, it was mainly last year that I really decided that I wanted to go 100% all in, and like I really thought that I could turn it into something.
Yeah, and that's kind of crazy to think about. Like, is you're a pro, but yet you're still very very much developing and still very young. How old are you now? 19, 18?
I'm 18, race age 19.
Yeah. So you're still physically developing and still even strategically and all those kind of things. You got so much ahead of you. So it's like just right there. So that's so cool that kind of just a couple of years ago you were like, I don't know if I could do this, and now you're racing pro.
It's interesting how just like, and I always blame it on like momentum, because like my first race last season went amazing. Like I did there's this race down in Georgia called the Tour of the Southern Highlands, and I'm not sure if some of the people listening to this will know that race, but it's like I think it starts out last year. It started out as a TT, and then a circuit race the same day. Then the next day was a road race, and it's mainly just like all the time because it's a time-based event too. It's not points, and so it's like an actual real GC, and all the times made up or lost in that road race. And I ended up having great success at that road race. And honestly, I blame where I'm at now because of that road race, just because it started off my season so good, and just my mental state was a lot better.
You just hit that, and it was just like a huge jump for you, is what you're getting at?
Yeah, like I hit that, and I think I got like 11th in the TT and 17 to 18 juniors out of like I think 60. But in my mindset, I was like, I'm not good at TTs at all, and it was a strange TT too because it was like I think it was 2 minutes long. It was insanely short, and I was like, that's not my forte at all. And then I came out of there, and I was like, I got 11th, and I'm only like 10 seconds down on like GC at that time, and I was like, this is amazing. And just from there on out, it just seemed like every race I was having, I was either setting a personal power best, a personal heart rate best, or just having a great result. And so that really just kicked the ball, and just got it rolling down the hill.
So where is it? Do you feel like sort of is your strong suit then?
I mean, I think it's still tough to say what my absolute strong suit is, just because like you said, like I'm still developing, but I really think that I might have a place in longer stage races.
Mhm.
And I say that because I think I just recover really well day in and day out. Like I'm not spectacular on any given day, but if it's just another day after another day after another day, and each day is just equally as difficult, I seem like my body just can recover well, and I sleep good, and in different environments, which is like
That's a plus.
surprising. Yeah, which is surprisingly an important factor when you're a professional cyclist. You're always on the road and sleeping in a different environment. But I think that's where I might find my home. I mean, also I think I have a decent TT in me, and I think I could definitely build on that more. And just because of that TT ability, I think, and that long power that I have, I'm also good at climbing. And so I really think I'm really hoping to develop myself into more of like a general classification rider.
Very cool.
Well, I think you might even be understating your time trial ability a little bit too. Given your resolve, and I think you gotta give a little background on national time trial last year that you decided to do. I don't know what. How many weeks ahead of time? I don't know. Maybe I'll do the time trial. Sure. Okay. Is your bike good? Yeah, I think it's fine. Okay. And so I'll let Seth tell the rest of the story. It's good. He's way understating how good he is, and it's time for not being focused on it.
I mean, yeah, like I was working with Todd as a coach last year, and he's helped me an insanely large amount. And we were talking about like maybe doing the time trial nationals as a 17, 18-year-old last year. And I was like, yeah, I mean, I guess I'll do it. I guess it's good to like see where I place or whatever like that. And I maybe did 3 rides on my TT bike, and little did I know that wouldn't even matter because I showed up to do the TT, and I've never been at a USA like sanctioned TT event where they actually have TT bikes allowed. And so I didn't know that they like measured my bike and everything like that. And so I went to get my bike measured and see if it was legal. And they said this thing is nowhere near legal. Like my position was just so extreme. And they're like, I don't think you can even cut your bars or anything like that. And I was lucky enough to know a guy who let me borrow his TT bike who did U23 nationals. And so I probably had 7 minutes to warm up. And I didn't do it on the trainer. I just rode around for 7 minutes on a TT bike that I've never ridden before. And then I was like, okay, time for a TT. And I ended up getting 5th on the day. So
That's not bad.
It really frames the
no big deal.
Yeah, I'm not really. I don't know if I'm that much of a time trial. It's like, dude, like people train, and it was totally just let's just kind of do it as an opener and just kind of see where it is, and you got the road race in the crib. You're gonna be there. Yeah, well, we haven't been doing the time trial, but let's see what happens, and see what happens. And he gets 5th. I'm like, what?
Yeah,
So,
it was a massive surprise to me because it's like, when you're on the starting block, it's just a massive state of like unknown. Because you're like, I've never ridden this bike before. I didn't pre-ride the course at all either. Like I looked at it online, but I didn't pre-ride it. And I was like, I don't even know this position. I don't know if like, because we switched out my power meters too. So I was like, I don't even know if the crank's completely tight. And I was like, okay, I just need the biggest like advice that I give to anybody who's trying to do better at cycling is just put all that negative thoughts as outside of your head. And just focus on like what you got at hand, And I really tried to do that, and it ended up working.
yeah, and I think
that's really good advice.
Yeah, it is, and I think as you look at an event like that, it's really easy to get all psyched out. It's nationals, it's a big deal, and all stuff.
Yeah.
And sometimes you just take all the pressure away. You're like, dude, I'm not riding my own bike. I had 7 minutes, but it doesn't matter because I'm just going to go out. This is what I got to do, and I'm just going to ride this the best I can right now. And we say all that, and it's a great story, and it also, but I was just not a way you'd go into a time trial that you were planning on doing well. This was just a leg opener. This was just to see how it goes and see where you slot in and get ready. So don't want anybody think that's the prep you should do because it's like it's not a great way to go into it, but you're able to take that frame of mind, and that's mature, good, professional advice. Is just because stuff's going to happen. I mean, you've been racing now. Is this your third? I'm trying to think, third or fourth full season.
Yeah.
And some people don't get that after 10 seasons. They're worried because they don't have the right power bar, or they don't have half a water, half a Coke or something, right? And it's like, and you're finding out like on a pro team, a lot of times you get what you get.
Well, yeah, for sure. Like that's definitely like it's of course good to be organized and have everything ready, but you have to also be ready for when everything else is not ready. You know what I mean? Because a lot of times in cycling, especially the higher up you get, the more you understand that a lot of things aren't going to go right. And I mean, everybody can perform if everybody has their perfect pre-race meal, their perfect amount of sleep. Everybody can perform at a high level if everything is right for them, but this sport's a lot about who can perform when stuff's not going right, you know? And that's
Yeah.
definitely what I've learned like traveling and racing and even as my first year as a pro is just most of the time stuff's not going to go 100% right. There's always going to be like that 10% that's a little off. And you just got to like you have to learn how to deal with that, but aim for that 100% accuracy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's really good advice. Weekend warriors like me could do a lot with that because I know guys like me and me in particular, you show up and you're like all frazzled about all this stuff and you're racing, some local race and you got 20,000 things that you think aren't going right. And then you're sitting there like racing pro and you're like, yeah, just roll with it, make it happen. So yeah, I think that's really good advice. Those guys in my boat, we should be listening to that for sure.
I mean, yeah, because it's always perfect to do everything. Like I'm by no means I'm like, oh, I'll just like show up to an event, but it's like to have that mindset of if I do have to show up to an event. I remember one time it was when I was like a Cat 3, and I misread the my start race like time. I thought it said like 3:30, but it was actually I think like 2:30, and so I showed up an hour before, and so I showed up at like 2:20. And I was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm gonna do terrible at this event." And I ended up winning the local crit, and I was like, "That's at least," because the race ended up waiting for me, and I was like, "At least they waited for the winner."
Right, right.
And so I'm like, at least they waited for something that was,
Yeah, I'm
you
sure
know,
all the other guys felt that way too.
yeah,
Kicked their
yeah,
ass. At least we waited for the guy who beat us. Yeah.
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Like, we couldn't we start without him? He could have caught up, you know. Yeah, yeah. You don't want to feel justified, like, why would he waited for when he got dropped in the first lap?
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Thanks, dude. You know. So, yeah, but yeah, take us through a little more of your progression, though. As you kind of got rolling here, as your second year there. I think it's kind of where we kind of left off. Kind of as you started to kind of build into that road scene and going from there, and then what your race opportunities were and how it started developing along.
Yeah, and so I eventually got road clips. Eventually got road clips and got rid of the mountain bike clips, and just started from the bottom and started doing like 5 hour weeks. Doing what I could with school, and really started focusing on crits because that's the only thing really around me. Like we'll probably on the local scene we'll probably have maybe 4 road races a season, and everything else is there's like 15 crits, 20 crits. There's like endless Tuesday night crits. And so I was like, okay, if I really want to start catting up, I'm gonna have to start focusing on crits. And so I started focusing on crits. Um, Ended up getting my Cat 3 upgrade with a few results here and there from Cat 4. And once I started as a Cat 3, I started realizing like maybe I should start dabbling in junior racing and like maybe I should try to get on the national team for USA Cycling and things of that nature. And so I started traveling around the eastern side of the country and doing local Cat 3 races like around there. I remember I did this race, I don't think it goes on anymore, but it was in Kansas City and it was called Velotech. And it was like the best race series. I think it was like 3 races. It was a time trial, crit, and a road race, so an omnium style event. And I ended up winning the overall there. And I was like, hey, maybe I'm a decent Cat 3, like, on the eastern side of the country. And from there, I just started really focusing on traveling more because I think another piece of advice that I'd give to even like junior cyclists or anybody who's trying to really move up and take cycling extremely seriously, like it's important to race with people that you have never seen before. Because a lot of times you'll go to a race like nationals or anything like that, a big caliber event, and you'll do these races and you'll never know the person like next to you. And so if you learn how to adapt to those certain race styles, you'll get better. Because if you race with the same people locally, Billy's going to go off with a K to go, and Joey's going to punch it on the climb. But it's really a different ball game when you don't know anybody and you don't know what they like to do, and it really teaches you to learn on your feet. And so this is the stuff that I started focusing on learning about with traveling. And then from there, I really focused on more national junior cowboy races, And I did Tosh 2 years back, which is Tour of the Southern Highlands. And that race, I ended up getting dropped in the road race, it's just crazy what a year can do, because a year later, I ended up getting fourth in the road race. And then I think from there, I ended up doing Tour of Labitibi that year, which for people who don't know, that's a 17 to 18-year-old junior UCI race up in Quebec, Canada, which is an experience and a half. I'll say that. I'll definitely say that. It's a completely different ball game doing stage racing, at least at that point in my development.
And that's a race for people that aren't aware of it. It's a really aggressive race. And it's not like a local junior race. I mean, it's the real deal when you get in that pack. So sometimes people from a little farther away, or they haven't heard of it. It's like, I encourage people highly to go. And I also encourage people to go with Bill Elliston. He takes a team every year. And it's just he's just a super quality human, first of all, but he's a really astute bike racing student, if you will. I mean, he had a good domestic pro career, but he knows a lot and he shares a lot. And man, it's like the experience that you get out of going with somebody like that, not just going and not knowing what you're doing, but having it organized and somebody that can really give you insights is so key, because that's a huge race. And as you found out when you got there, and it's like, wow, this is no joke, right?
Yeah, when you show up, and like, it was the first time I've raced with people from other countries, because you show up to that race and it's I'm blanking on the name, but it's a race where a lot of junior national teams go to earn points to decide like how many riders they get to take to Worlds and things of that nature, and like where their start positions are for Worlds. And so it's a really high caliber race, and like you line up with people like, right next to, you line up to the team France or team like Denmark, and you line up with like insane people, and you race in a punch where the common language is not English. And it's crazy because you'll see like Japan forming their lead out train because they're a complete sprint team, but it's a crazy environment. And then it's a big, like, you're diving in the deep end, when you're a junior cyclist and you go do that race, because you stay in a classroom. Like, for people who don't know, like, the housing you get for that race is literally a school, and your team gets a classroom with cots. And you have probably like the size of a yoga mat of a cot, and you're expected to race like the hardest you've ever gone, and you're sleeping on a cot. And it's truly, whenever people were like, Bill Elliston was telling me like, this is what pro cycling kind of is, and I was like, there's no way. And Elliston was perfectly right, because that is what pro cycling is. It's performing yet again it's performing at your best ability when you don't have a lot. And Bill did a wonderful job at teaching us that. And I'd have to say, like, Bill is probably one of the most professional people I've met in cycling. Like, he knows exactly what he's doing. He's brought a team. How many years there, Todd? He's probably brought a team 9 years now.
Oh, easily 9 years. Yeah, I mean, I'd lose count. I mean, he's been really steady and every year doing it. And anybody that I have that's eligible, I'm always like, Bill, take these guys, because I know they're going to learn a lot in a short period of time. Because there's nothing like learning like boots on the ground, right? I mean, I can say stuff to people all day long, but you know how it is. It's like you hear stuff, and then all of a sudden you're in it, you're in the thick of it, and somebody's like, just here it is, and then you're like, wow, okay, now I really get it.
Yeah, it's true. It's so true. I remember a quote it's not so much a quote, but I remember like the exact thing that Bill said before my first UCI stage race, and he said like when you're in the pack, find the bubble, find the perfect little bubble where you're not jostling for position in the first 10 people and you're not taking wind, but you're not in the back where you're like at risk of dealing with crashes. And I still think of what Bill said to this day when I do races. Because most of these races, when you're racing with 100 guys, it's all about finding that bubble, that bubble where it's easy to, you're still in the draft and it's easy to see the front of the race and it's easy to react to things, but you're not so far back that you're at risk of crashing. And that's just perfect advice from Bill. But that race was crazy. I ended up flatting on the first stage of that race, which costed my GC contention, but I still had fun. I still have friends. I still talk to the people I went to that race with even today. And it's for any junior that's listening to this right now, like I highly recommend trying to get on a team to do Tour Libidity, because it's the most exhilarating event that you'll do, when you're 17, 18, because you're going to some weird town in Quebec and you're doing some big stage race, and it's crazy. It's just crazy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow,
So
that's great. That's a phenomenal story. Now, going through all of these experiences, how did you then make that jump to the first pro contract? Like, what does that look like? And were there other teams that you looked at? Sort of, how does that play out for you?
I mean, it was definitely it's definitely not an easy thing to do. I'll definitely say that. Even I was unsure at the time if I was going to be able to get a pro contract, just because of the way that the cycling environment was last year. It was just, if for those of the people who don't know, like a lot of the sponsors pulled out of big teams last year. Like UHC is now like consolidated to Rally UHC. Jelly Belly quit sponsoring their team. Like a lot of teams lost their sponsors, and so it creates an interesting dynamic, because you have a lot of young guys, like coming out of juniors, and they're fast and they're ready and raring to go, but there's no spots really, because you have a bunch of old guys, not so much old, but experienced guys.
yeah, that's nice save though.
you call them. But yeah, you're right though. There's a lot of spots that just weren't out there for a lot of really good riders after last year. I mean, that was a really hard year to get onto a pro contract as a young guy. That had to be really difficult.
Yeah, it definitely was, because it was just, some experienced guys, they like, it's tough to take the junior who hasn't done anything really, like with very minimal experience, over the experienced guy. But it's also important to take on those juniors, because they're the next future of the sport. Eventually that experienced guy within like 3 to 5 years is going to be, running out of his career, while in 3 to 5 years for the junior, he's going to be in the stride of his career. And so that's kind of the approach that I try to take when talking to teams. Like I definitely cold emailed some teams, and I was lucky enough to have a friend who knew a friend who knew a friend of the people who run Hincappy, and I was lucky enough to be introduced to him, and that's mainly how I got my pro contract. I got into the door based off relations. And then, I kind of showed my resume, and they kind of liked what I had in my potential, But even then, like, throughout that whole time, I was very unsure of my career in cycling. Like, just to give you an example, I moved out of my parents' place, and I didn't live in a college dorm. And I was like, okay, I gotta make a little rent here, I gotta make some money to live. And so I ended up getting a job at Barnes and Noble, and for a little bit I was, working Barnes and Noble for probably 35 hours a week, still trying to train 13 hours a week, and still trying to do my 16 college credits that I had last fall. And for that little time period, it's probably a month and a half out of my life. It was very stressful, but it was those kind of time periods that make you realize, once you did get the pro contract, how grateful you are for it. because it's like now I don't have to, hustle books, work at Barnes and Noble.
Right. Yeah, that's quite a balance for sure. Were there other teams that you talked to, or were you kind of focused in on Hincapie?
I mean, a little bit. I was trying to focus. I was honestly trying to talk to more towards U23 teams, just because, when you go to like USA camps and you talk to everybody, that's kind of like the next pathway. You're a junior, you're a U23, and then you're a pro.
Mhm.
And so I was mainly trying to focus on U23 teams, but just because there's such an influx of juniors, it was difficult to get a spot on U23 because you, again, have some experienced U23 guys, and they're still under the age category, and then you have young juniors trying to come up. And so I was like, okay, maybe we can skip the U23 thing and just kind of go straight for the shoot for the stars, And I was lucky enough to land on the moon.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. So once this sort of progression starts, now you're a pro. I don't know if we mentioned this before, but give us the school you're at, just in case we had. I don't know if we said that yet, but
Yeah, I attend UNC Charlotte.
all right. So you're attending UNC Charlotte. You're taking 16 credits in the fall, 18 credits in the spring. You're on a pro contract, so the schedule's got to be insane. What does the race schedule and training schedule look like for you once you make that commitment?
It's definitely the training load and training hours and just time on and off the bike of being in the gym, doing like some cross training and stuff like that has definitely increased. And the flexibility that you have to have as a pro cyclist too is definitely have to increase, which sometimes comes in conflict with school. And so just because like you have to be flexible with races that you're going to and certain schedules, and we have an idea of like what races we're doing for like the year, but we usually won't know the complete squad until maybe like a month out, month and a half out, and even sometimes it's later just because of another rider gets sick or anything like that, and so you gotta be quick on your feet. And so honestly, what it looks like a typical day for me, for an example, for when I was at school was wake up, go to a class, get back, try to eat a little bit before my ride, then go training for 2 hours. I mean, on a plus side, like 3 hours for a weekday, and then go back to class for 3 to 4 hours, and then come home, try to stretch a little bit, do hang out with some friends maybe if you have time, and then do it all over again the next day. And so it's definitely a busy schedule, and it definitely can be busy at times with racing. But I think the major thing is just communication, because I've met professors so far that have been they've been very open to and willing to like work with me with my schedule, just because they understand my situation. And then I've met professors that honestly just don't care. They're just like, I mean, I have 100 students, so why should I try to like accommodate you? And I
Right.
get both sides of it, because it's like, I mean, yeah, professors shouldn't have to really accommodate me in my professional cycling needs, but it's just mainly about finding that out within the period of time where you can drop classes without having a penalty from it. So the
Right.
first 2 weeks of every class, I'll talk to professors and try to have an appointment with them and just be very upfront with them and just be like, this is what I got going. I'm a hard worker, and so it's not really a problem of getting the work done. It's just like when the work can be done.
Right. So just
And
being proactive on it, and like you said, communicating with people to make sure that they know and and everybody's upfront on how it works.
yeah, and just honestly, just being just mature with everybody, because I think the biggest change from high school to college is just maturity, and you really just have to be an adult about everything. Because I mean, people will work with you and people just won't, and that's just the way that some colleges go. And I think that's also a big part of why people kind of turn to collegiate cycling, just because they have a little more leniency with classes and stuff like that, and they still get to race.
Because it's tied in with the school.
Yeah. Like you could be like, oh, I'm racing. I'm doing a school sport, this weekend,
Right.
and so professors, you can basically just send an email to a professor at that point and just be like, I'm doing a school sport. Can I have, an extended time period to submit this paper or submit this assignment? And they'll work with you a lot easier because it's a school event.
Do you have a school team at your school?
We sadly don't. We have, I think we have a club. I think about 2 years ago, because my brother goes to the same school as me, and I think about 2 years ago, my brother tried to really amp it up. But just the interest at UNC Charlotte is not massive.
Yeah, well, it's hard with clubs because they're usually student run. So as students kind of graduate, you have years where, and we see it locally with some of the local colleges that, every couple of years they got like a, Cornell or U of R or somebody, they got like a pretty good team, and then you don't see much of them, and they kind of come back up because those are student run. So it's just kind of whatever the student interest is at that particular time, as opposed to a college program that kind of has some investment from the school. But I don't know I'm not really well versed in that, so I don't know how many are out there, but I don't get the impression that there's a lot as far as, substantial college programs.
Yeah, there's definitely not a lot. Especially if you're in there's certain places where there's definitely a drought of them. There's I think places like Kansas, if you lived in certain states where there's definitely more of a football focus or a soccer focus for colleges, then there's not a lot of cycling opportunities for that college. I think I'm lucky enough or at least North Carolina's lucky enough to have at least a few. I want to say Lenoir-Rhyne. There's one in Brevard. I think it's just called Brevard College. And then there's one that I was in contact with whenever I was trying to decide if I wanted to go the collegiate cycling route, which is Belmont Abbey, which is really close to me. But again, these schools are schools that are not very well known, and it's difficult because you're your cycling program fits with me, but your school program doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
You go to school and you love their cycling team, but their just academics does not fit what your academics need to be.
Were they scholarship programs that were available there?
Yeah. That's the big, another big way to get, I think, younger cyclists coming out of the junior category into collegiate cycling, because some schools do offer scholarships for it.
Yeah. There's a junior that Todd and I both have worked with that's at SCAD, or was he a junior? He's at SCAD now, where they have a college program and this, a scholarship program that he's on. But like you said, it's a school that it's an art and design program, which fortunately is exactly what he wanted to do. So it was a great fit for him. But if you were not into that major, that's not something that you would necessarily be drawn to. But if you are and you can get your college paid for, that's a wonderful opportunity. But I don't know how many of those are really available for young cyclists out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and definitely the collegiate scene's it's a whole thing into itself too. And I know people that I didn't do collegiate cycling. I kind of just did my own thing. But I was going to an engineering school, so it was well, unless I was going to go to MIT or something, they have a collegiate team. You have the whole ECCC division, and they're pretty strong up in the Northeast up here. But yeah, otherwise, if you look at how many colleges there are, and then how many have cycling programs, it's a small percentage. And then you'd have to, as Seth has pointed out, you have to kind of try to blend that with, well, what am I trying to do at schools? If I'm just going for liberal arts, well, then I guess you can kind of land wherever is most comfortable. But if you have something more solid that you're trying to go after, then it may not make sense. So yeah, it's a tough mix. But I think also kind of to where Seth's going is you don't need to do that to get somewhere in cycling either, although it does open up nice opportunities. And I know people that have done it really, really liked collegiate cycling,
Yeah.
So
no, for sure. Cause there's definitely, I think a lot of people, coming out of junior cycling, they leave it and they're like, all right, where do I go? And there's definitely other routes, And so if there's any juniors cut listening to this that are aging out or something, and they're really thinking about what they're going to do, don't just automatically be all right, collegiate cycling, or automatically go to okay, U23. Just really look at, there's definitely a lot of different routes that you can go to. You could you could go to a local Cat 1 elite team and try to work on crits, or you could try to, be on a U23 team, or if you do want to do collegiate cycling, definitely do it. But there's definitely other routes.
Yeah, and I know people that have come out of collegiate cycling have been very successful bike racers, and they always look back at the collegiate time as a really fun time because it's a real team atmosphere. Then, and maybe there's people that would listen and say, "Well, maybe I'm in my freshman or sophomore year. I've never really considered bike racing." It's a really great way for them to get introduced because they have that team atmosphere and they can learn a lot from the people that are there on a collegiate team that have some experience. So it can be a really great door for people to enter the sport for sure.
Yeah.
So here's my question for the college life. I'm thinking about my college experience, what I can remember of it anyway, and what's the social life look like? I know it just sometimes just going to class was hard enough for me to balance everything. You're going to class carrying a heavy schedule and working out and training and going to pro races and all this stuff. Like, how do you have time to hang out with your buddies? Especially, do you have friends who, I assume who are not cyclists, who don't really understand the discipline? A lot of times if you're on the football team or the basketball team, you're rooming with other guys who are on the football and basketball team. So they're on that same schedule, that same track. You kind of might be kind of an outlier there. So how does that work in terms of maintaining, if you can, a sort of a social life and still doing what you're doing?
Yeah, it was definitely a learning curve on that aspect too, because, if you're in high school, you spend 8 hours a day with like your friends, and, you have classes together, you go to lunch together, and there's always blocked out time for that. And with college, it's like, it's again, like a really open, mature thing. You got to be an adult about everything, including just being social with people. And that's something that, I think I was lucky enough to have a lot of my friends from high school go to the same college. And so I've kept some of the same friends. And then I've also, gained friends through, just classes and everything like that. And you find out that everybody kind of has their own thing that's taking up their time. Like for me, mainly, if I'm not at school or if I'm not sleeping or eating, I'm riding. And for other people, it's like, oh, well, they really like to hike or they really like to run. And you find out that a lot of people have other problems, or not even problems, but other things that they need to work into their schedule. And you just find out when your schedules kind of, meet. And I haven't had really a problem with it. I've been able to, I'm lucky enough to have had a girlfriend before I turned professional and before I went to college, and we're still together. And so that's still, I still can keep a relationship with all this schedule, surprisingly enough. But I haven't had a complete problem with it. Just sometimes you got to make sure to cut back on the college life before a pro race.
yeah, I can imagine that would be challenging.
Yeah, don't do the college life the Friday before Athens. Definitely don't do that.
So once you make the jump, now that you're racing these pro races and you've had a bunch already, how's that changed? How's that been? What's that experience been like in these pro events and being on a pro team?
It's honestly a big jump. People always say 3 to Pro 1-2 is a big jump, but honestly, Cat 1, if you're a Cat 1 to a complete pro road race is definitely the biggest jump. Just because you don't have to, everybody, people who are there to race are there to race. They don't have to worry about upgrade points, they don't have to worry about anything. These people are, most of them are getting paid to do what they do, and everybody there is actually there to win. If you're not putting yourself or a teammate in a position to win, then you might as well not be racing. And that's the attitude that's in most of these pro races. It's completely different, because it sounds so simple, because of course every time we show up to a race we race to win, but actually at these races everybody's on that line. They're like, I believe I'm going to win, or my teammate's going to win.
Right. And
there's you always see it on TV or Tiz Cycling, the website that they, you can find Paris-Roubaix kind of illegally. That's tizcycling.com.
Right.
But You see team tactics being used, and it's definitely being used at these pro races. And it's definitely, everybody knows what to do in certain moments, and there's just so much experience and so much strength, in one race. And that's definitely the biggest change from, Cat 1 racing, Cat 2 racing, or just elite racing. It's just everybody's there to win, everybody's experienced there, everybody is strong, and it just makes for really tough, really fun racing because everybody's within like 0.3% of each other, and you're all chasing that 1% to beat the guy next to you. And that's where you really start looking down at like, what am I eating right before a crit? What am I eating right before a road race? What time am I eating that? Like, what am I eating on the bike? What's my position like on the bike? It's when all those percentages actually count up and they actually completely matter. And that's definitely just been the biggest change for me.
Anything that's been a huge surprise out of that?
I think lately I've been really focusing on eating, and that's been the biggest change, honestly. Just like for me personally, like I've been really focusing on the timing of what I eat, and not really like the quality, because I've always had the quality. I've always ate good and ate what I needed to eat, but it wasn't really at the right times. And so now I'm starting to find out if you eat mainly more around the bike and like around when you're riding. And it sounds like, common sense to most people who are in exercise, but to me, it was just something I never really thought about. And I've definitely seen an increase in my power. And just to give you guys an idea, like today I did an event, it's a local event called Assault on Mount Mitchell. And it was like a 5-hour event, and you finish up this climb called Mount Mitchell, and it's the highest peak in the eastern side of this country. I want to say it's I think it's 6,500 feet up in the air, which is, and you start out I think at like 1,000 feet, and so it's a massive climb. And for those 5 hours, I averaged 250 watts, and just give people an idea of what I weigh like 145. And that's definitely just been an insane benefit, just because I focused on what time I was eating what. So making sure my body gets the right carbohydrates, right protein at the right times.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And, all those little things, and those are even things that, elite riders and more people, as more information becomes more readily available, that I see it over the last, way too many years, 34 years now, but people are much more aware in like the last 10 years of marginal gains on things, and looking at those things, and the information's there, the physiology information's there, and there's people do podcasts and people do websites, and the one problem is that you can get a lot of misinformation too, and so finding good sources of that stuff, but I definitely see people do it, unless you're Chris Horner and then you just eat McDonald's and you didn't care.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, can never leave that part out, where there's some people it's like it doesn't matter, they just eat whatever, they're still awesome, but
Yeah.
But most of us, it helps, and you can see those effects. So but it's good stuff to kind of keep those things in mind, and as you're making that step, and you're looking for those little partial percentages, because you're right, because everybody gets closer and closer as you get to the top. It's like a pyramid, right? Everybody's closer and closer in ability, and everybody wants it, and contracts are on the line, and there's a lot more at stake. So
yeah, that's also another thing. Like, this is the first day that I signed the contract, I was like, wow, it's my job to ride a bike, and it's like, when you're racing, it's not like you're racing anymore. It's like you're working, kind of. And it for the first race or two, it definitely changed the way I raced a little bit. But now that I've just become more aware of it and experienced by it, it's just like I'm racing again. But it was definitely a big change, because it's like, this is my job now. I'm racing to keep my job and to better my position in my job.
Right. Well, it's like I used to always say, nobody likes a Cat 1, right? Because pros don't like you because you're going to try to take their job, and Cat 2s don't like you because they think, what, now you're here taking our money.
Yeah.
So being a Cat 1's the hated spot,
So what's coming up here for you this rest of this season?
So next weekend I'm racing the Winston-Salem Cycling Classic, the crit and the road race, which should be a really fun time. That's like probably the most local race I'll do. It's like an hour and a half for me. So it's in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. And then after that, I'll be heading with the team to I think it's called Oklahoma City Pro. I want to say Pro Criterium or something like that. And doing 3 crits out in Oklahoma City, and then I'll be heading to Tulsa Tough. And then further down that, I'll be, of course, going to U23 Nationals, hopefully a little more prepared with my TT bike this time.
You're going to ride it for more than 7 minutes this time?
I think so. I think I'm aiming for 20 to 30 minutes. And
oh, boy, that's a big training block. I like it.
And then after that, I'll be doing my first Pro Nationals.
All right, very cool. Has there been, as you've kind of embarked on this pro career, and you're lining up in some of these bigger pro races, has there been anybody you've lined up next to that you're like, holy crap, that's like a dude that I just I've always really looked up to, like kind of lining up next to some of your heroes? Anybody who's sort of really been intimidating that you come up to? Or you don't have to say if you don't want them to hear it, but
oh no,
but
I'll say no, it's definitely even honestly my teammates. We have Ben Wolf, and I've always seen him in a breakaway at either Tour of Utah or Cascade, just something, I've always seen Ben off the front, and he's always been a local guy too. He races, he comes down to Greenville, South Carolina for the winter most of the times. And so I always have seen him in local races, and I'm like, that guy looks like he puts out massive watts. And, and TJ Eisenhart, it was weird because, I've always seen him on Instagram. I've always looked up to him and what he's doing for the sport. And then at team camp, when we're all meeting each other, he's my roommate along with Tanner Putt, who's done Tour of California 6 times. It's just crazy because the people that I've always looked up to are on the same team as me, and they're giving me advice, and they're like my friends. It's just crazy because there's so much experience on this team, and I'm so lucky to be able to absorb all that experience. And it's definitely weird that you mentioned that, because that's it's just you line up. It's not even lining up to people that you're like, wow, I'm lining up to next to this guy. It's wow, I'm rooming with this guy.
Right. Yeah, that's awesome. Very cool. All right, man. Well, I'm a huge fan. You're doing great stuff, and I'm looking forward to seeing what you do in the future and for the rest of the season. So thanks for coming on, and thanks for telling us a little bit about what it's like to be you and to be a young pro.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. It's been a blast, man.
Yeah, definitely. It's been cool to kind of just get a little background on just the kind of the holistic thing, and it's been really great to just kind of get your just good conversation around that. So appreciate you being open to doing that and supplying us with some of the content. There's going to be some video content along with this podcast on the website as well. So and I think that it'll really kind of help round it out for some people to kind of get a little bit day in the life of student and pro cyclist combination.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll put some of your social media links into those so people can follow you and continue to follow your career. And hopefully you'll come back on again and we can check up with you and see how things are going.
Yeah, I'd love to do that, guys. This was honestly so much fun. Thank you guys for having me again.
All right, man. Thanks a lot. We appreciate it.
Yeah.
All right, man.
Peace out.
All right.